Could the state of Louisiana outlaw day games in September? Maybe. Is it a good idea? We're talking about it. It's Locked on LSU. Let's go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks for making us your first listen every day. We're free, available wherever you get podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We visit with the voice of the South Alabama Jaguars today, JT Crabtree, who will give us the blueprint for the Jaguars to pull an upset. Also, Brian Kelly met with reporters. He gave an update on injuries and also how the linebacker cores look this week without Harold Perkins. So we'll get to that here in just a second as well. But I want to start with what has been the hottest button issue around LSU circles this week. And I understand that this has been the hottest button issue because it's South Alabama week. Not a lot of people are focused necessarily on this game per se. So what happened in the stands this past Saturday against UCLA has gotten an awful lot of attention. Unless if you're living under a rock, you know this, but I guess I'll reset it for those that maybe don't. LSU played UCLA, new TV contract with ESPN, and the Tigers played the game at 2:45 Central on ABC, which is a great slot, middle of the day. The entire country can watch. The problem is that there was record heat in Baton Rouge, and what was a robust crowd at the start of the game was a 50% crowd, quite literally, by halftime. I've drawn this analogy. You know, if you've ever watched those neutral site games like Florida, Georgia, for example, in Jacksonville, the stadium is split right in half. Half of the stadium is red and black, half the stadium is orange and blue. Or if you watch Texas and Oklahoma from the Cotton Bowl, half the stadium is burnt orange, half the stadium is crimson and cream. Well, Tiger Stadium was like that at halftime against UCLA, but it wasn't UCLA's blue and gold. It was empty seats. And the line wasn't fan loyalty. It was shade. The west side was shaded and stayed as crowded as you would imagine it being a tie ball game against a Big Ten opponent at half. The east side was a ghost town. People escaped the very dangerous temperatures, which there was a report from Katie George at ESPN on the field, or on ABC on the field, that on the turfed sidelines, it was 130 degrees. Now imagine sitting on metal bleachers in that. Now, it's not just uncomfortable, it's downright dangerous. There were reports that some 70 people, upwards of 70 people needed medical attention, not and you could say, well, that's 70 out of 100,000, but this isn't 70 people that left because they were uncomfortable. This is 70 people that needed medical attention because of the heat. That's far too many. And you know, it's a product of playing a game in the middle of the day in September. And you know, part of LSU's history obviously is night games, and there's a certain aura around night games in Baton Rouge, but if you know the history, it dates back to 1931. And the reason LSU put lights on the field and started playing night games at Tiger Stadium was twofold. Number one, it allowed people to get to the games, in large part farmers who were maybe manning their crop and farming during the day could get to the stadium. And then also, obviously, to escape the oppressive and sometimes dangerous heat and humidity in Louisiana. So naturally, that's a thing that happened in the 30s and has continued for nearly 100 years now as a tradition. Well, it kind of came to a head this weekend with what happened, and a lot of conversation is centered around it. And many people, and I wasn't even aware of this until many of you brought this up to me, but there was a law in the state of Arizona whereby football games in September cannot kick off until 6 p.m. So you cannot have a day game in the state of Arizona in the month of September. Now, when I looked it up, the average high temperature in September in the state of Arizona is 102 degrees. That's the average high is 102. The average low is 77. So it makes sense when you're talking about a 35-degree difference. If you kick off in the evening, either at dusk or when it's dark, then naturally it's going to be closer to 77 than it is 102, and you're not going to have a lot of the potential heat-related issues you would if you're kicking off in the desert in the middle of the day. And I do understand that in the Gulf South and in the southeast part of the country, it's hot everywhere. But Louisiana, and particularly Baton Rouge's proximity to the Gulf of Mexico, being in the southern part of Louisiana, and obviously having the Mississippi River there as well, the average temperature in Baton Rouge in the month of September is 90 degrees. The average temperature is 90, but the humidity obviously kicks the heat index higher. And then, look, I'm not a meteorologist here, but we've all lived here long enough to understand this is how it works. I mean, we've all watched the news our whole lives, and you see there's the average temperature, and then there's the heat index. And the heat index regularly creeps into the triple digits in the month of September. That's why LSU largely plays night games in September. So this was an unfortunate situation, but it was bandied about that maybe maybe Louisiana could pass a law that would mirror that Arizona law, which would say that you cannot play a game in Louisiana in the month of September before 6 p.m. Well, Brian Kelly was asked about that when he met with the media on Thursday evening after practice, and in no uncertain terms, he endorsed that idea.
I certainly would. I mean, we saw what happened. I just need to see that happen once, right? That in a place like Tiger Stadium to have that kind of environment where it is just so difficult to sit and watch a game, it totally makes sense. And so, look, I get it, right? I mean, TV's involved, the conference is involved. There's a lot of things that you have to consider. We don't have to deal with it again this year, and I think the window is really small that we were going to have to deal with. But I would definitely throw my hat in the ring on supporting something like that.
I think if the head football coach at LSU supports something like that, my guess is there is a state legislator in some part of Louisiana that would draft legislation and would push it through the House and the Senate, and then it would be signed by the governor, and that would be a thing that could happen. Now, I don't know what that would mean for the SEC's television contract, because you sign over your grant rights, and ultimately the TV networks decide when you play. I mean, that's why LSU played at 2:45. They didn't make the schedule. When you join a league and you sign over your grant rights to the league goes and negotiates a television deal with the networks on behalf of all the member institutions, and you get the financial benefits of that. And LSU does, like all the other member institutions. And that's why you build these palatial facilities, and that's why you can pay coaches, millions of dollars and have the best of the best, is in part because of the TV revenue that you generate. But that's the positive. But there is a flip side here, and I wonder, would it really be that big of a deal if a couple of times, when LSU's playing home games in September, they're night games instead of playing in the day. Look, LSU's going to play this weekend against South Alabama, night game in Tiger Stadium. Is it really that dramatic of a difference to flip something there? And you could avoid this whole thing. And Brian Kelly's right. So you only have to see it once. It's like if your home is burglarized, if you don't have an alarm system, I mean, you could go 20 years and never have an intruder into your home. But the first time someone breaks into your home when you're not there, guess what you're doing the very next day? You're going to buy an alarm system. It only has to happen once. So this isn't the first time this has happened, but it might be the most egregious or the most obvious, the most public. And I think it will cause an action or a reaction here. And I would highly endorse this. I fall in line with Brian Kelly. And listen, I know there's other fan bases that have done the whole mouth breather dork, suck it up, you're too hot. Like, it's not about being hot or sticky or uncomfortable. Listen, it's sticky and humid and uncomfortable in night games, but you don't see what you saw Saturday against UCLA. And that's something that can't happen. Not only for the optics of it, for the financial reasons of people leaving the game after one half, and the health of not only the fans, but the players and everyone involved. So, yeah, this is something that I would endorse as well. It's not just because I love Tiger Stadium at night, like all of you do as well. But it's just a common sense thing to do. So we'll continue to follow it. But if Brian Kelly is endorsing it publicly, you better believe someone in the next legislative session will draft that legislation. We'll see if they can push it through. Okay, in the meantime, LSU is going to play a game under much fairer conditions Saturday in Tiger Stadium with South Alabama coming in. Will they have two key starters? Brian Kelly updates those injuries. We'll get to that when we come back. Locked in LSU, your team every day. With Robinhood Gold, you don't need a silver spoon to eat up the financial favors of the 1%. Robinhood Gold allows others to get the rates and perks usually reserved for the high society. Now, the resourceful individual with Robinhood Gold can earn the very liberal rate of 4.5% APY on uninvested cash, receive unlimited 1% deposit bonuses, and be rewarded with a handsome 3% retirement boost on an IRA account. Robinhood Gold provides the privileges of a high net worth for any net worth. These generous benefits are now available for only $5 a month. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. Sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Terms apply. For product-specific disclosures, visit Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. Rates may change. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold, LLC. Brian Kelly, when he was meeting with the media on Thursday before the South Alabama game, did in fact update several injuries, including starting cornerback Zy Alexander.
Zy is questionable. He's going through the protocol, so it's hard to take him out of that protocol until we get through it. But he's making progress through it, so we'll leave him as questionable. Chris is probable, but again, we're bringing him back from a long layoff, so I think we just see how he goes when we get out there on Saturday.
Chris, of course, is Chris Hilton, who is yet to play in the game. He did dress for the first time this past Saturday against UCLA, but did not get out there on the field. Disappointing. So we're still waiting to see him make his season debut. We've talked plenty about Chris Hilton. As a matter of fact, as a plug, my buddy Hunt Palmer over at LouisianaSports.net, website of which I am the publisher, has a great write-up there right now about Chris Hilton and what Chris's return may do for this offense. It may be the final piece, the final unlock. And we've talked about it plenty. I mean, Chris Hilton for his career at LSU averages over 18 yards per reception. I mean, that's nearly 20 yards a catch. He is the game breaker. He is the stretch the field guy. He is the component of this offense, the singular component of this offense that you don't really have right now. So to get Chris Hilton back 100%, would be fantastic. And it would be a huge boost to this team. And looks like you'll have him at or close to 100% for Ole Miss, which is really what you need. Now, Zy Alexander is the other player that he mentioned there. And I'll remind you that, Zy Alexander is someone we've talked about a good bit here on the show. He was a year ago your best cornerback. He was your most consistent guy. And we know he tore his ACL in the Army game, missed the remainder of the season, decided to come back for his final season of college football. And, the truth is it took Zy Alexander time here to get back into playing shape, into game shape. And Brian Kelly was very transparent about that. Much of fall camp, we saw Zy Alexander running third team. And as we've seen the season now go along, we've seen his snap counts increase as well over the course of this season. So, if you go game by game, it's been interesting to watch how Zy Alexander has done this from not playing in that first game, against USC to now seeing Zy Alexander ramp up to being the player with the most snaps so far in this season. That's fantastic to see for Zy Alexander, to go to play 114 snaps so far in the season. You can see that ramp up. The thing with Zy Alexander is that we know what he is. Does that make sense? Like, we know what Zy Alexander is. At his best, Zy Alexander and Ashton Stamps are your two best cornerbacks. And Zy suffered the concussion this past week against UCLA, so only played 19 snaps in that game. But just look 1 week prior against against South Carolina, forgive me. And, his snap total was 49. He went from not playing week 1 against USC to getting out there against Nichols for the first time and starting to see his snaps increase. He played 34, so from 0 to 34 to 49. So you're seeing, and then down to 19 after the concussion. Point is, you're seeing his role increase, and you know what he is. So I almost look at this week and say, if there's any limitation on Zy Alexander, don't play him. Because you have guys that you would love to be able to get those reps. If it's a freshman in PJ Woodland, a guy in Jair Brown who's played a lot of nickel for you. Look, we could talk about J.K. Johnson as well, who went in and played for Zy Alexander after he suffered the concussion against UCLA. J.K. Johnson's a guy who didn't play a lot of football at Ohio State before he transferred. And then he transfers to LSU and was injured in fall camp last year, missed the entire season. So really, he's playing for the first time of his career. So this is one of those games where it's the last opportunity this year where you're going to have the opportunity for a layup, where you can put a guy out there who may not be a great option, but if they're not great on that day, it's not going to cost you the game. That could happen against Ole Miss. That could happen at Arkansas or at Texas A&M. This is the opportunity. You want to go get J.K. Johnson 30 snaps in this game to go get him that run and a little seasoning. It's a spot to do it. So while, yes, I want Zy Alexander healthy, I want him out there if he's able, and I want to play in as much as he can, this is one of those opportunities where it's probably a good chance to get some of those other guys reps that they otherwise wouldn't get. So maybe not the worst time for this. Now, the same is true also at linebacker. And Brian Kelly was asked how the week has gone without Harold Perkins. Of course, we learned officially on Monday that Perkins was out. So LSU's practiced all this week without Harold Perkins, as we well know. And Kelly updated kind of how the week has gone without him.
We made some, slight changes. We activated Xavier Atkins in the second group, but, we've got Wes Weeks back. So we feel really good about the linebacker rotation. If we need to play 3 linebackers, we certainly can do that. If we play 2 with a nickel, we can do that. So, we feel really good. I thought we had a really good week of practice. Our guys will play well. Again, we feel terrible about Harold, but I think our guys have moved on and had a good week of practice.
There was a follow-up where Brian Kelly mentioned Whit Weeks. And he was very clear to say that while Whit Weeks doesn't provide the pass rushing ability that Perkins does, the ability to play linebacker in space, Brian Kelly said Whit Weeks was Perkins' equal, meaning the ability to go play in space, to run sideline to sideline and to cover. And that's interesting because to that end, maybe that drop-off isn't as significant. And also is very validating for a lot of fans who have been aching and clamoring, and certainly were all of last year, to see more of Whit Weeks when it was very obvious he was the best guy he had at that position. So apparently we are ready and primed to see much more of Whit Weeks, who, look, after that first week, Brian Kelly said at point blank, they just can't justify taking him off the field. He can't be in a platoon. We played the audio for you here. Weeks needs to be out there, and apparently he will be plenty more this week, especially now with Harold Perkins out. Okay, it is Locked on LSU, your team every day. Tigers and Jaguars Saturday. One person will be in that number is JT Crabtree, who is the radio voice of the South Alabama Jaguars. I had a chance to visit with him on Thursday, and there's 2 things of great importance that he said that I want you to hear. And we'll get to that next. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL fans, you can get a start to the season with a big return on FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats. You can view live play-by-play and so much more on the very same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's at FanDuel.com. You want to bet this weekend on LSU and South Alabama. Look, Tigers are 0-4 against the spread. Maybe Vegas hasn't quite figured out the point spread value for LSU and how to adjust. while I think LSU wins the game, certainly there's plenty of value there in South Alabama. Maybe you're looking for your football Sundays with the Saints visiting the Dirty Birds. Told you about the old angle before, man. An old Mike Detillier angle. 80% of the time a team loses its starting center, they lose that week. Well, it certainly happened to the Saints when they lost Eric McCoy against the Eagles. Remember, the Atlanta Falcons lost their starting center, Drew Dahlman, so they'll be making the change there. Maybe this is an opportunity for the Saints to make good on that angle. Maybe go on the road and get a win, but you can do it all, bet on it all at FanDuel. Go to FanDuel.com. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. I had a chance to visit with JT Crabtree, who is the radio voice of the South Alabama Jaguars. There was two things that I wanted to talk about with JT in particular. One of them was a blueprint for South Alabama to come in and potentially get the win. And you can listen to this entire interview if you'd like. Just search After Further Review on your favorite podcast app or on YouTube. You'll see it there. But if you look at South Alabama, this is the perplexing thing, because there's a lot of LSU fans that have looked at South Alabama this week and said, man, I don't know. Man, I saw him put up 87 against Northwestern State. Saw him go to Boone, North Carolina last week and pummel Appalachian State. Both those things happened. Well, they also lost to Ohio U 27-20. Now, granted, their quarterback, Gio Lopez, didn't play in that game. And they also had a home game against North Texas where they lost 52-38. They allowed 52 in their home field to North Texas. Now you come to Baton Rouge and LSU, and the physicality of an SEC team feels like there's a pretty big disparity. But I asked JT, what is the real South Alabama? Is it the team that started 0-2 or the team that has averaged 60 points in the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, it's a great question, isn't it? I think what we've seen the last 2 weeks is more of what we expected from South Alabama this coming into this season. You know, it was a young defense that really didn't play with each other coming into the season, and so there was a huge adjustment period for the 9 new starters we had between injuries, graduation, and transfers. We really only have 2 guys that played significant snaps a year ago, and so this defense is finally starting to come together a little bit and gel. And then offensively, this is exactly what we thought this offense could be. You know, with Major Applewhite being here the last 3 years as our offensive coordinator, we knew that we could do some dynamic things. With Gio Lopez being now a true dual-threat quarterback that we've never really had in our program's history. And keep in mind, we started football in 2009, and we've only been FBS since 2012, so still a very young program. But the fact that we were able to kind of have that dual-threat guy, use some different things in our offense, I think that's really paying dividends for us. And I think what we've seen these last 2 games, and yes, I know 87 against an FCS, whatnot. But like you said, last week, App State dropping 48 at their place. That's something that doesn't happen in the Sun Belt Conference. And I think what we've seen the last 2 weeks is more of what we'll see moving forward.
I will say the 87 they scored against Northwestern State, you need to completely hand wave that. And I believe there's something in the football ecosystem, football universe, the football gods, say what you will, that's going to come back and punish South Alabama for that. There's no reason ever to put up 87 on anybody. And you could say, if you don't like it, stop it. And largely, I agree with you. But that's also like if you're a varsity high school football team playing against 8th graders. There's just no reason to go out there and do it. There's a mercy, an unspoken mercy rule involved in there. You want to go score 87? Go score 87. There's still time on the clock. Go do it. But understand, at some point, that's going to come back to bite you. That's just the synergy. What goes around comes around in the world. That'll happen to South Alabama eventually. Now, I know there's a lot of LSU fans that fear this game, and they wonder, could it be Troy of 2017? And I just don't see that at all. That 2017 game with Troy, that was a game where Ed Ogeron was in his first season. Danny Etling was the veteran. Miles Brennan was a true freshman. There was a conflict there with Ogeron and Matt Canada. Ogeron wanted to play Danny Etling. Matt Canada wanted to go with the young guy and Miles Brennan. They split time. Brennan threw some bad interceptions in that game, and it was a disheveled mess. That's not this. That's not where LSU is. LSU is going to win this game. It's just a matter of by how much and how does it all transpire. But I did ask JT, if South Alabama came in and won this game, what would that blueprint look like?
It looks, on the defensive side, we've got to eliminate the explosive passing plays. Our offense, I think, will have some opportunities score with the way LSU's played defense this year, and now the injuries that they've encountered as well. And so I think for South Alabama, they've got to make sure they don't give it up over the top. We've done pretty good in run defense, allowing 120 on the ground per game, but we've given up 271 through the air. And guys like Kyron Lacey and Aaron Anderson are probably going to give us fits. Guys like that have given us problems, especially stuff over the middle, some quick ends and slants. And so that's where I think the key is for South Alabama. If they want to get that marquee win, pull off the big upset on Saturday, that's what they got to do.
It is worth mentioning 2 years ago, South Alabama did go to Oklahoma State and they won in Stillwater. This is also a team that several years back went down to the Rose Bowl and played UCLA and lost by a point. If you remember, that was another game that was sparsely attended. That sort of became well known for that. Chip Kelly was still the coach. But that's a team that has gone and played these games. They played at Tennessee. They played at Nebraska. They've gone and played these marquee non-conference games against Power 5 schools, largely to catch a paycheck. But they have been competitive at times as well, even upsetting Oklahoma State a couple of years ago. So we'll see how it all plays out Saturday in Tiger Stadium. On the next episode, I will give you a final preview and prediction. We'll do some bonus content here on Locked on LSU. I'll get that drop Friday, either Friday night or Saturday morning. It'll be there for you, but make sure you're here either way. So do us a favor. Hey, look, thanks for making us your first listen every day, like we always say. Now, great time to go catch up on Locked on College Football. It's linked in the description of this episode, so you can catch it right there. You don't even need to search for it. Hey, and if you are listening on podcast, thank you so much. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, please smash that like button. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video. And please be sure to let a friend know that if they love the Tigers, we got you here every single day for Locked on LSU, your team every day.